back to Jerez for round 6 of the 2018 FIM CEV Repsol. It's race 8 of 11 in the 2018 Moto2 European Championship, where 2 former winners are going head-to-head for the title. 2014 champion Hector Garzo is a track specialist here in Jerez. He has a 52-point deficit to recover against 2015 gold medalist Jerez-Ángel, who's not dropped from the podium in a single race so far this season. The statistics show Augusto Fernandez sits second, but after moving to the Moto2 World Championship, he sits out the CEV. And although there are 6 others still in mathematical contention, we're looking at 2 realistic contenders for the title. Only 1 race this weekend for the Moto2 category, so a little more pressure on these riders to make a big impact, Fran.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, Rafin has been the man with the consistency this season, and that's seen him take a really hefty lead. But he's also not just been on the podium, but consistently been a winner and had the best pace each weekend. So, you know, he's doing exactly what he needs to, having had World Championship experience, come back into this European Championship and really show his pedigree, so to speak. And he's doing a really great job of that. Obviously, he has also had a couple of rides now in the Moto2 World Championship again with the stop-and-go team. But he's still here in the European Championship fighting for that crown, and he won't be on the bike next time out in Thailand. So obviously that makes the calendar a little bit easier for him. So yeah, it's Titipong Warakon taking over on that seat with the SAG team in Thailand. So Rafin gets to concentrate on this championship and try and take that crown again. Like you say, he has already taken it before, so he knows what he's doing. And yeah, should be an interesting one to end this year, I think, as well, with like you say, Fernandez going, and then Pons as well will be a replacement rider in the World Championship. So he's got a pretty packed calendar now, and a little bit more pressure than Rafin. He'll be getting on a plane to Thailand next week. As you said,
Jerez-Ángel, a serial winner in 2018, winner of 3 consecutive events. Race 2 in Estoril, Valencia's one-off race, and race 1 in Barcelona, and 3 second places since then. So monotonous consistency for Jerez-Ángel. He's certainly proven himself adept at playing the percentages game. When he hasn't been quite on 100% top form to take the race victories, he's been able to simply pack in for 2nd place, or indeed 3rd in the case of race 1 in Estoril. And that consistency compared to riders around him who've had non-scoring races. Hector Garzo started the season with 2 non-scoring races in Estoril, of course, and Augusto Fernandez now out of the championship. The man with the consistency has been Rafin.
Definitely. I think it's interesting as well, Fernandez is the only one of the 3 who isn't going to contest the rest of this season as well. Like I say, Pons will be stepping into the speed-up seat that's been held by Danny Kent so far this season. He'll be taking that from the Thai GP onwards, so there's a permanent replacement for the Brit. So he's going to have a pretty busy end of the season, but still will be racing on in this championship. And Fernandez, meanwhile, is now Lorenzo Baldassari's teammate in Moto2, and he will not be. So pretty interesting. But Pons has had the superior pace here, so it is a good chance for him to try and take that fight to Rafin today, I think.
Plenty of late season moves, and it's also the time of year where teams are starting to think about their plans for next season. So there's no better time if you're a Moto2 European Championship rider than to start thinking about potential World Championship options for next season as well. And we do see first MotoGP, then World Superbike, gradually category by category, all of these the seats for next season start to be announced. A look through the grid then. And our front row, Hector Garzo, Lukas Tulovic and Jerez-Ángel. Pons, who, as I've already said, is a track expert here, really enjoys this place. Took his first ever CEV race victory here in 2014, the first of 9 wins in the class. Over the last few rounds, only 11 points short of Rafin in 5 races added together. But that double retirement from Estoril is what's left him with a great deal of work still to do.
Yeah, definitely. He's paying the price for that tough start to the year in Portugal. But like you said, he's not been that far off Rafin over the last few rounds, so here is a good place to hit back. But it is quite a deficit he has. And here we have Lukas Tulovic, second on the grid. There's a few rumours about him maybe moving up next season as well. Have to wait and see what happens with the German's future. But great qualifying for him. Obviously, to get in front of Rafin in this category, you know you've done a good job. So it's great for Pons, obviously, who's fighting him in the championship, but also Tulovic to really confirm some good pace here at Jerez and take that second place on the grid.
Tulovic returning to the front row of the grid for the first time since Valencia. He's been a very inconsistent scorer this season. 3 retirements to his name, but this a track he knows well. Finished 5th here last season and made his debut here back in 2015. Completing the front row, Jesco Rafin, who took advantage of the summer break, as Fran said, to make a return to the GP paddock, a scoring finish in San Marino and a second appearance last weekend in Aragon, so keeping race fit for the defence of his championship lead. The 2014 CV Moto2 European champion, 10 times a race winner in the CV. 3 of those successes scored this season, but Rafin has never been a race winner here. He did secure pole position in his championship-winning 2014 campaign, but never a winner here, and that's something he'll be looking to put right here today. As we complete the front row then, Pons, Tulovic and Rafin, and move on to row 2. Tommaso Marcon, Alessandro Zacconi and Dimas Ecki. Marcon chasing his first podium in his debut CV season. The 18-year-old hasn't yet managed better than 5th, but he's one of only 3 riders to have scored in every 2018 race so far. So good consistency from Marcon.
Yeah, definitely. You can see him compared to Tulovic. They've obviously gone different ways. Tulovic has been a bit podium or bin it, or at least a big scorer bin it, and Marcon absolutely concentrating on that consistency and a really impressive campaign from him. And yeah, just great to see that progress again. Like you say, second row of the grid. Not so far off either, the guys ahead of him. There's a really pretty tight between 3rd and 4th. Sorry, I said it's race number instead, 10th. Between 2nd and 4th, anyway, is really, really tight. And especially between Rafin and Marcon, and it's just really, really tight for those guys. But Pons has quite a gap there on pole position. He's really come out fighting, I think, here in Jerez, and if he can have that kind of consistent gap to the field in the race, it's definitely going to be his to lose.
So 5th position, Alessandro Zacconi, who we saw a couple of moments ago. Dimas Ecki starts on P6. What I haven't mentioned is that all of these riders have been promoted 1 place, because it was Hector Garzo who actually was the best qualifier here yesterday, but he will start down on the 5th row of the grid in P13 after receiving a penalty. So Garzo with work to do, and we'll talk more about him in a couple of moments' time, as we see Dimas Ecki, who crashed out of race 2 in Aragon on the 2nd lap, and that result dropping him to 6th in the standings, and that's the same position he held at the back end of the 2017 campaign. The 25-year-old from Indonesia, who actually made his debut at this circuit in 2014 and only narrowly failed to secure a podium position here last season. He was just a 10th of a second away from 3rd place at the checkered flag. Best qualifying since the opening round at Estoril. Dimas Ecki will be optimistic of a good result here today. That completes row 2 then. Tommaso Marcon, Alessandro Zacconi and Dimas Ecki. A look now at row 3. Firstly, Miguel Pons, Marc Alcoba and Xavier Cardelus. Pons first, who doesn't have a great record here in Jerez, looking to put that behind him here today. Just 1 point from 3 CEV appearances here to date. Has been a consistent middle-order finisher in 2018 as Pons, and currently sits in 9th position overall. His fellow countryman, Marc Alcoba, alongside him. The 18-year-old in his first CEV season, also racing in the Spanish Superstock 600 Championship, which he leads ahead of its finale, which is here in Jerez in a month's time. So he's got that to think about as well. Alcoba, who starts on the 3rd row of the grid. All smiles before we get underway with this race for Alcoba.
Definitely not to be confused with Jeremy Alcoba in the Moto3 category. But yeah, it's great for these guys to get experience. Oh no, have I cursed you? I'm very sorry. That's not my intention. But yeah, it's great for these guys, obviously, racing in different championships. They get to really get to know these venues really well, and it's also really useful to just get as much experience as possible. And Jerez, obviously, is a Grand Prix Classic as well, used throughout every category. So super good experience for these guys to race here. And yeah, it's just a great track and so much different stuff here, different types of corners, and there's so much history as well. It's a really good stage for these guys in this category and in the National Championship, the RFME version as well.
As we complete row 3, Mikel Pons, Marc Alcoba and Xavier Cardelus. Cardelus, who will be grateful for this weekend as a potential confidence booster. Ran at the back of the field in World Championship races in San Marino and Aragon. And still looking for his first podium since moving from Moto2 in 2015. 12th overall in last season's championship. Cardelus, who sits in 10th place this year.
So it looks like with the towel around the neck there, maybe it's a little bit warm down there now. We'll see the brollies out as well to protect them from the sun as they're waiting for the lights to go out and this race to get underway. It is getting steadily hotter. The first trip I made to Parc Fermé for Moto3 was okay. Second trip for ETC, noticed it getting a little bit warmer. So I have to say I'll probably boil on the way for Moto2, guys. But, you know, it's really, really great weather here, but it is getting hot, despite the fact that it is October tomorrow. So that could be a bit of a bigger player for these guys on the bigger machines to see how that affects tyre wear and their race pace throughout the race. So something to maybe keep an eye on, but I think maybe on the face of it, Pons is going to have some people chomping at the bit to try and catch him, but maybe a little bit of an advantage in his pocket.
Mention of the rider I promised I was going to come back to. We're just completing the 4th row of the grid for our introductions. On the 5th row of the grid, first rider on the 5th row, Hector Garzo, 20-year-old in only his second Moto2 season. As I said, he qualified so well yesterday. That penalty has pushed him back down the grid. If he can make progress quickly on the opening couple of turns and join the front group, that might not necessarily impede him from taking a podium position, because he had a significant pace advantage here yesterday. We're going to see him in a couple of moments, I'm sure. Crashed out from this circuit from 6th position last year, and of course that impeded him as he went on to 4th in the championship. 4th in the championship once again in 2018 is Hector Garzo. And he was set for a 3rd front row appearance of the season, having earned his first pole position, or his first top spot in qualifying, but of course that penalty ends up relegating him down the grids. Yeah,
I might have been a little bit harsh maybe saying that Pons, because he is now on that pole, that he didn't necessarily quite earn, but maybe, I'm not sure. I think it's a pretty tall order to get through that amount of riders after a penalty that big. But then again, we have seen, for example, this year in the Moto2 World Championship, Miguel Oliveira win from 17th on the grid, or really get in that podium fight. So, you know, anything can happen if he can make that lightning sort of Jorge Lorenzo start and really carve through that traffic. Not the Motorland Aragon style, the more regular Lorenzo whole shot kind of move. If he can really nail that as the lights go out and make his way safely through that traffic, then I think maybe he could have something to do with it. But I think it's going to be a tall order, because those 3 guys on the front row know what they're doing as well, and they'll be keen to get as good a start as they can and just escape as quickly as possible from that traffic, who will be doubtless, what's the word? I keep wanting to say chomping at the heels, but I think that's 2 English phrases put together. But they'll be hot on the heels of those 3 on the front row, but I think it might be a bit of a tall order for those 3 guys, Marcon, Zacconi and Eki, to really get in that podium fight. But then anything can happen, and not least of all at the first corner, so we'll have to see how it goes. But Pons, I think, got a really good shot of taking this and cutting that deficit a little bit.
Hector Garzo then, who we're talking about, trying to recover through the field from 13th position on the grid. The riders are up and running, and we'll take you through our full grid in a couple of moments' time as they start to make their way through their sighting lap. Both of the championship favourites who have in the end made it onto the front row of the grid for this race, but only just really, because Jesko Ruffin, of course, qualified 4th, and he was set to miss out on a front row grid slot. But subsequent penalty for Hector Garzo, who had topped the timesheets, relegating him down to 13th, and promotes Jesko Ruffin up to 3rd. So Ruffin ends up not losing out too much from a qualifying where he wasn't quite at his absolute best.
Yeah, definitely. But I think Raffin's calling card this season and in general has been that consistent race pace and being able to manage that a lot better than those around him quite often. Fernandez has had some really impressive rides, but Ruffin has just looked completely in control the whole time, you know, whether that be, okay, today I can get 3rd and keeps his powder dry and takes 3rd, or pushing away at the front and taking those wins like he has done so often. So I think he shouldn't be counted out for the race, but I definitely think Pons, if he can make that break, maybe now, like we said, it's that first kind of round of the season in Portugal that's dented his championship hopes. So he definitely could have the pace to escape at the front and has the experience to bring that home if he can do it.
Worth a mention is the fact that Pons and Garzo were significantly faster than anyone else in qualifying, and with Garzo sort of relegated out of the sights of Pons, he does have a realistic option of breaking away. We do tend to see more breakaways in Moto2 than in the lower capacity machines, of course, and that's exactly what Pons is going to be trying to do here. And there was half a second between Marcon and Zacconi yesterday as well, so theoretically we could see the field splinter fairly early on here, and Rafine will certainly want to be in the lead group of whatever splinter group ends up occurring here in Jerez.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like we were saying as well, Garzo will want to blast through as quickly as possible to try and get onto the coattails of those guys as well. But we'll have to see. Everything will, not everything, but a lot will be decided at the first corner here, I think, as to who's going to be able to immediately make that break.
So watch out for our front row runners, but also keep an eye trained on Hector Garzo trying to come through from row 5 on the grid from 13th position. Edgar Pons inherits pole, and Jesko Rafine is promoted to 3rd. The championship leader gets a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card. He starts on the inside in the run down to turn number 1. Away we go. Good start from the number 3 of Lukas Tulovic from 2nd position, but he gets blocked out in the run down to the first turn, and a great start from Jesko Rafine, who comes up into P2 and claims that position quite forcefully as well, and relegated back a place. Tulovic ends up down in 4th. 5th position now for Tulovic, so he seemed to have got away well, but all sorts of dramas further back down the field as well.
Yeah, definitely. Lukas Tulovic really aggressive off the start line there and just losing out of the first corner. Have to see who that is that's gone down. Is it Garzo? Maybe. It's the blue and white of that Vimu team, but I can't quite tell who that was there. But yeah, Tulovic losing out there a lot, and Rafine really making that count to get in there behind Edgar Pons to try and take this fight for the win to the Spaniard in the lead. But it looks like, yeah, it may have been Garzo who went down there. So obviously that's a big risk when you are a front runner and you're starting mid-pack. You can get caught up in incidents like that.
We did see Chantra earlier on making his way back through after coming off the bike and ending up with a decent point-scoring position, and that's going to be the target now. Not only one comeback coming through from 13th, but now an even more dramatic comeback trying to come through from right at the back of the field. This is going to be a long haul now. He's got to make his way through all the stock runners and then up to challenge for the main point-scoring positions towards the front of the field. It's Edgar Pons then, who is looking good and doing exactly what we said he might do and make a break. He's more than half a second up already on Jesko Rafine. Yeah,
definitely. Immediately pulled the pin, has Pons, but Rafine is where he needs to be, ideally. If he's not got the pace to win this race, he needs to be in second. Oh, some elbows out there for the fight for the podium there. Just getting a bit all crazy down there for the fight for 3rd. Sorry, I can't get my words out today. I don't really know why. But Rafine definitely has some nice, clear breathing space back to those guys, so he can concentrate on trying to keep within touching distance of Pons, control that gap and take a safe second, or if he can, just, you know, wait for those laps to tick down, manage his tyre and try and attack further towards the end.
Alcoba on Eki down the inside into turn 13 last time around, and that moves him up into 3rd position. Eki now coming under pressure from Lukas Tulovic. The top 5 with a bit of a gap behind them, already more than half a second in fact behind that top 5, so we've got a 3-way fight for 3rd, because Tulovic, after getting sort of bullied on the opening couple of turns really, is now starting to come back into the race. He is on the tail of the 2 riders directly ahead of him. Might not be too long before he tries to make an impression there, as we see Tommaso Marcon, who sits in 7th position ahead of Zacconi, Brenner and Solis, and almost side by side, but not quite in the end for Dimas Eki, thinking about a move on Marc Alcoba.
Yeah, it's getting a bit fruity there, isn't it? Definitely. I think Tulovic maybe you would expect from qualifying and from the weekend so far and from his track record, would probably have the pace to go past these guys and take that 3rd place on the podium. But obviously it's all getting a little bit close and crazy at the moment, so maybe best to wait how that pans out and then make his move one by one rather than really tagging onto the back of them if they're going to duel. But now you can see Eki just dropped off a little bit off the back of Alcoba, so maybe Tulovic now will want to pick his way past the Indonesian and then hone in on that podium.
Gap over a second now between the top 2, and Marc Alcoba 0.8 of a second further back from Jesko Rafine, and already we're starting to see a race developing for 3rd position and then indeed for 6th. At the moment, it's Cardelus who's managed to get ahead of Marcon for that 6th position. But 2 separate races starting to develop, and neither of them are for the race lead. It's Edgar Pons out in front then, ahead of Jesko Rafin in 2nd. Mark Alcoba leads a group of 3. 3rd position down to 5th, ahead of Dimaszeki and Lukas Tulovic. And then it's Tommaso Marcon who starts 6th. We're going to get a replay of the start, and we might even get an opportunity here to see what was going on further back down the order. We see Zacconi there lifting in the run down to the first turn, but we want to see in the middle of the pack the collision there, and well, 3 into 1 doesn't go.
Yeah, definitely. You can see Garzo, unfortunately, just a complete victim of circumstance there on the outside of someone else's incident and just forced wide and off into the gravel. So that would be a bit of a heartbreak for him. Obviously, as well, these guys, they only have 1 race today in the Moto2 class. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty difficult pill to swallow, I think, for Garzo. But, you know, that's the risk you have when he's had that penalty. He's been forced to start back there. That's what can happen.
No great secret of the fact that Edgar Pons is the fastest rider out there. He took a double race victory in Aragon last time out. He's leading by 1.5 seconds here ahead of Jesko Rafin in 2nd. Mark Alcoba sits in 3rd. He's broken half a second clear now of Dimaszeki, who sits in 4th, and Tulovic starting to settle down as well as he tries to fight with Dimaszeki. He needs to clear him quickly because Alcoba is taking that as an opportunity to break away. That other fight further down the order, we've still got 4 riders just covered by a second from 6th position back. So 2 real fights going on. The top 3 are starting to separate themselves out, and the focus is on the action further down the order.
Yeah, definitely. That fight that obviously we saw then in the replay started on the start-finish line between Marcon and Zacconi. Elbows out immediately. I don't think on purpose, just obviously both heading into the same little bit of space there. Got a bit hairy. But, yeah, like you say, I'm quite surprised so far. Alcoba's doing a really, really good job to try and stay with Rafin and stay as close as he can. And I'm surprised Tulovic hasn't quite been able to take these guys or really make any kind of significant move so far. But he does look like he's now comfortable.
Oh, we've got a faller. And it's one of our podium trio. And incredibly, we've lost Mark Alcoba. And from 3rd position in that race, just as I'd said he was breaking clear of that fight behind him, down he goes. And we have a new complexion to this battle for the top trio.
That is a very, very, very angry Spanish Moto2 rider there. You can see absolute heartbreak for him, but he's up and okay, obviously just very angry. And got another crash there as well. It's all cracking off in that gravel trap down there. And both riders completely fine after those incidents. I have to see what happened here. We'll get a replay. Just, oof. Obviously looks a little bit more dramatic. Immediately so angry, obviously, in that podium fight. And going so well. I think, yeah, definitely. And then another one.
Absolutely nothing to do with the first.
Yep, completely unrelated there. And 2 definitely heartbroken competitors there in that gravel trap.
Normally when you see 2 bikes in the gravel trap and 2 riders in the gravel trap, you put 2 and 2 together. But on this occasion, you would have been wrong because obviously blindsided by the incident up ahead of him. We end up with one of the lower riders in the field sliding off.
Yeah, I think it was Alejandro Ruiz, and it can be a real distraction when you come around a corner and you see an incident like that. That can, you know, or obviously it could have been his own crash and just unfortunate to happen at a similar time. But yeah, obviously Alcoba, absolute heartbreak there. I think he'll really be kicking himself for a while longer.
Opportunity for a pass here for 3rd position down the inside into turn 1. Tulovic moves out of it in the end. Eki was, well, under slipstream attack from Lukas Tulovic, who was trying to get through. And Tulovic, it looks to me, is sliding it around all over the place over the last lap or so. He's really desperate to kick on because he can see Rafin breaking away. 2 seconds is the gap between Pons and Rafin up front. Eki a further 1.5 seconds behind in 3rd position. And Tulovic pegged right to his tail, attempting to find a way through for a potential or provisional podium position.
Yeah, German really seems to be going into attack mode now, honing in on the back of Eki. Like you said, when it looked like maybe into turn 1 he'd be able to make that move, it was just less than a tenth between the 2. But Eki seems to have a little bit in his pocket at a few places on the track, so it'd be interesting to see how this develops. Obviously, both have been on the podium before, but yeah, it should be a good fight, this. But Tulovic, so spectacular on the bike, the way he hangs off it. But it's good to see these guys concertinaing, you know, who's got the advantage where. But hopefully we will get a battle out of this pretty soon as well, because Tulovic definitely looks racy.
Great drive out of turn 5 from Eki, and that meant Tulovic was just too far back to get anything down the straight and into turn 6. He's still right with Eki. In terms of the times and the pace, Zacconi, Marcon and Cardalus behind are more or less keeping up or setting the same pace as Eki now, but they're not really bridging that gap. They're still 1.5 seconds behind Tulovic, that gaggle of 2 Italians and the Andorran Cardalus in 7th position. But while these two are fighting with one another, there is always the risk that that group of 4 ends up joining them. Interesting fight going on actually between Zacconi, Marcon, Cardalus and indeed Marcel Brenner, who's managed to tag on to the tail of that contest, having started in P11. Nose to tail as they come into turn 1, but no change at the end of that straight either for Lukas Tulovic. Yeah,
definitely. You can see Tulovic now back on the tail of Eki and threatening to maybe make a move soon. But yeah, like you say, those guys behind, quite comparable pace, but just not able to eat into that gap. So, you know, they're kind of keeping up, but not actually making that much of a gain on the 2 guys ahead of them.
I wonder at what point in this race Edgar Pons starts to back off the pace, because he's over half a second a lap faster than Jesko Ruffin at the moment. He's got a 3.5 second gap up front, and he won't want to be taking risks, because a non-score really would leave him in a difficult spot in terms of the championship overall, because it would also give the 25 points to Jesko Ruffin. So there might be a stage at this race where Pons starts to back it off and think he's built enough of an advantage, but for the moment he's just setting hot pace out in front, 0.4 of a second faster than Ruffin in sector 2 alone, and Jesko Ruffin has really got a mission if he wants to try and claim victory. I think he might just settle in for a 4th consecutive runner-up position. Ruffin 2nd, Eki 3rd, Tulovic still in 4th position. He's dropping back again. There's certain sectors of the lap where Tulovic just struggles to stay with Dimas Eki, and it's particularly towards the start of the lap, and then midway through the lap Tulovic starts to build it back up, and he's closing again on Eki here. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's probably going to be a matter of time for Eki in that fight with Tulovic, because the Germans had the better pace so far this weekend. But, you know, he's hanging in there at the moment, doing a really good job, and there are a few places on the track where he seems to have a clear advantage and can keep himself just clear of that attack. So I think it'd be an interesting one. But like you said, Pons absolutely electric out front at the moment, completely unmatchable. And yeah, we'll have to see if he can keep that up. Obviously, he won't really need to. He's got such a huge amount of clear air behind him now in front of Ruffin that he can really afford to manage that race and, you know, kind of relax into it. But that can also bring its own risks. And quite a lot of riders say that it is a lot harder if you do try and consciously sort of slow down a little bit and not push that much. It's harder to keep concentration when you are riding on your own at the front.
Change of position for 7th. Brenner getting the better of Cardalus on the start-finish straight and down into turn number 1. So Marcel Brenner making good progress here at the fringes of your screen there. You can see them still nose to tail over P7. They had started to drop off the Italian duo Zacconi and Marcon. No change in the top 4 positions, but that fight still ongoing for 7th and 8th places, as they slide, in the case of Tulovic, my goodness me, into turn number 6, and well, almost speedway style there with the back end all over the place. Tulovic managing to control it, holds on to P4.
Yeah, definitely pretty spectacular backing it in there from the German, but he just seemed to have lost a bit of ground now on Eki. So, you know, maybe the Indonesian is going to have that pace to keep himself just ahead there. I think it's always interesting when you have guys like that who are a bit more experienced and have been on the podium and that. But Tulovic, obviously, he has been on the podium, but not as much experience, a lot less consistency as well, to see who comes out on top in that and how much Tulovic maybe will push for that podium and take that risk now, or will he just kind of settle for that 4th and take home good points.
Good to see a bit of these 2 battles further back, 5th and 6th. And at 7th and 8th in 2 separate fights at the moment. Brenner having passed Cardalus, not really able to pull very clear of him, and the Andorran might have a go back for 7th position as they scream down the start-finish straight to complete lap number 7. Still plenty of mileage left in this race, of course. No change in either of those 2 positions for the moment, at least, as we see the group further back down the order. And at 9th position, our lead pole, Piotr Bierzynski, and coming down into turn number 1. And we actually see David Sanchez here, the lead stock runner at the moment, 11th in the scratch race, leader in class, and 4 positions up on his nearest rival in class, Daniel Says, who is 8 seconds back in 15th position. So Sanchez looking like he might have that category sewn up here today as well.
Yeah, super impressive that as well, to be in front of a few guys on Moto2 machines. That's always good. Like, obviously, we had that incredible race at the start of the season in Estoril that Lopez just won in those mixed conditions on a stock bike. But it's really, really good when these guys can mix it with those guys in Moto2 just on the edge of the points and show what they've got. And Sanchez doing a really great job there in 11th at the moment.
Race settling down up front at this stage. 7 completed laps. Edgar Pons out in front. Still setting hot pace. Last lap around 1 minute 43.8 compared to a 1:44.2 for Jesko Rafin. But even that pace is more than half a second slower than Pons was going towards the start of this race. His personal best, fastest lap of the race at the moment, 1:43.1 compared to a 1:43.6 personal best for Jesko Rafin, who just hasn't had an answer at any stage of this race so far, and another half a second lost in sector 3 there for Jesko Rafin. So at the moment it looks like another damage limitation ride, another second position finish, but it's only going to be 5 points made up by Edgar Pons, and with each passing race only making up 5 at a time, Pons could really do with an Eki or a Tulovic getting in there and beating Rafin and docking his points total.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, it's all very well starting to win now, and he does cut into that points advantage, but it's not by much, because if Rafin can take those consistent second places and be best of the rest, when there are weekends when he doesn't have that pace compared to Pons, then nothing's going to change that much. Rafin's advantage is such that he can afford to play it safer and play the long game and really concentrate on winning the championship rather than simply having these one-off sort of lightning weekends where he's untouchable and then maybe have a little bit more bad luck or just not quite get it together at another event.
You're seeing there the gaps between these lead riders that are more than a second, but the riders who show on the graphic 4th, 5th and 6th are a whole lot closer than that. Tulovic starting to drop back into the path of Alessandro Zacconi and Tommaso Marcon, so that's the next fight to watch. 4th, 5th and 6th positions, and a separate duel for 7th and 8th, because Brenner still hasn't lost Cardalus. 0.3 of a second between those two riders. The Swiss rider in 7th position and Cardalus sitting in P8. But Tulovic, as I say, 9 seconds back from the leader now, just half a second in front of Zacconi. That's where our next fight is, 4th, 5th and 6th.
Yeah, Tulovic really losing out now. Quite surprising. Not sure exactly what's going on with the German rider, but yeah, definitely falling back now into the clutches of the likes of Zacconi and Marcon. They're on the fringes of the top 5, and Eki now, you know, is really consolidating that podium, which would be great for the Indonesian rider. So, you know, impressive performance from him to have withstood that pressure, which there really was quite a lot of pressure for quite a while from Tulovic there. And yeah, he's not that far off Rafin, so it'd be interesting to see how that pans out over, you know, another 8 laps of Jerez. There's quite a long way to go.
That shows just how extreme the advantage is for Edgar Pons out in front, ahead of Jesko Rafin in 2nd, Dimas Eki in 3rd. Our race leader has checked out, 6 seconds clear, and Eki somewhat isolated now in 3rd position. We said early on that we thought it was just a matter of time before Tulovic came past, but Eki has done a good job to consolidate that position, and Tulovic instead has started to come under pressure from Marcon and Zacconi, who are still going absolutely at it. 1/10 of a second between them last time over the line, and we might be able to pick up that battle between 5th and 6th positions, but for the moment we're seeing Jesko Rafin, our championship leader, in 2nd. It would be yet another consecutive podium finish for him, as he sits likely to finish in P2 that will match his rider number.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's yeah, you can see the space now on that back straight. Rafin still in the same camera shot as those guys behind him, but Pons absolutely gone and disappeared off the face of the earth there. Pretty incredible. He might have time to have a quick coffee on the final lap maybe, and really yeah, it's an incredible performance. Obviously, it's a bit of a shame for the race as a fan watching it, but it's a great display from him, and does show Rafin that he can't afford to relax at any of these remaining events. You know, he's got to seriously earn that championship if he wants it, and got to have the mental strength to sometimes, you know, accept that 2nd place and take those points and then reset for the next round. But Tulovic now under some attack.
Tulovic ahead of Marcon and Zacconi, 4th, 5th and 6th positions. This is the fight that we've been building up over the last couple of laps, and Tulovic really under pressure here from Marcon, who's looking for a way through. Separate fighters. Cardalus comes down the inside of Brenner. Remember, Brenner passed Cardalus earlier on this start-finish straight. The pair are swapping and changing. A dive move down the inside from Cardalus sends him wide. Brenner goes for the cutback and recovers that position, all in the fight for 7th place, as we see an isolated race leader 6 seconds clear from Jesko Rafin.
Yeah, as that move at the final corner there, pretty much an instructional video of how to attack and then take back the place at the final corner in Jerez, which obviously is named Jorge Lorenzo. Maybe don't try it the Marc Marquez style in 2013, a little bit too much risk. But those guys there, yeah, great couple of moves through that final corner. And yeah, Brenner taking it back ultimately. But Pons look high and dry, everything nice. Leg dangle, spectacular, basically out on a track day.
And Marcon has now got ahead of Lukas Tulovic while we were taking a look at Edgar Pons making his way round the circuit quite comfortably out in front. Marcon up to 4th position. Tulovic relegated down to 5th. It would be interesting to keep an eye on Tulovic here because I suspect that it might not be too long before Zacconi starts to come through and have an attack as well for P5. And then Brenner and Cardalus are all in there as well. So we've got 5 riders covered by just over 2 seconds at the moment from 4th position down. And that's where our fight is in this race. Marcon, now that he's broken from Tulovic, might just be able to hold on to that 4th position unless Zacconi can dispatch Tulovic fairly quickly here for 5th position.
Yeah, definitely. And as you can see now, that gap between Eki and Rafin just seemed to have eked out a little bit. And the Indonesian is a little bit more risk from those behind him now. So it'd be interesting to see over the next sort of 6.5 laps how that plays out, because you can see Marcon seriously on a charge now.
Marcon then in the middle of your shot there, behind Dimas Eki. Less than a second behind him though, 3rd and 4th positions. You can see it's very tight just in the fringes of your shot there between Brenner and Cardalus. Still, those two have been knocking spots off one another all race as they come back down into turn number 1. Dimas Eki leading that group from 3rd position. Tommaso Marcon still in 4th place, half a second in front and behind him now to Tulovic, who has managed to stabilise in the latter stages of that lap number 11. And Alessandro Zacconi sitting in 6th place is still under some pressure from Marcel Brenner. But Brenner and Cardalus so busy fighting one another, they're missing an opportunity here to be in that podium chasing group.
Yeah, definitely. I think a few of those guys in that group, that sort of, I don't know whether you call it the second group. There's not really a second group, is there? But that group there, definitely, I think they would like to analyse the race afterwards and just see they've cost each other a little bit here, just chopping and changing maybe a little bit too much when they could have kind of seen the race and how it was going to unfold a little bit more presciently and concentrated on trying to keep that pace up and really give themselves a chance at the podium fight. Because Rafin, obviously now he's about 7 seconds behind Pons, which is an incredible gap for the Spaniard there. But Eki now is well within striking distance of Marcon, and it's everything to play for to get on that podium.
Tulovic with a new personal best 2nd sector, so he certainly knows that it's now or never in this race. They're not too far behind Dimas Eki, as you've said. Marcon is right on his tail now for 3rd and 4th position. We're talking about the last of our podium positions here today. 10 seconds back from the leader. Jesko Rafin 7 seconds back from the leader, but you can see on the fringes of your shot there the fight for 3rd position. Eki only narrowly ahead of Marcon, and Eki might not be able to hold on to this for too much longer because Marcon is certainly on a charge, and having passed Tulovic already, is going after 3rd position here. The final step on our podium, nose to tail as they head down into turn number 1, and it looks as though Marcon has already made the move. Marcon ahead of Eki for 3rd position.
So sadly we missed that move at the final corner there. I thought it looked like you could see that flash of that green speed up in front of the red and white of the Indonesian. But yeah, confirmation that Marcon made that move stick and is now in podium contention. Be interesting to see now how Dimas Eki responds to that. Obviously, he had that pressure from Tulovic earlier on, but he didn't really have to defend a move or decide when to fight back or how to play the game. So it will be interesting to see what happens with him, and also Tulovic, obviously, like you said, picking up pace again last time around a little bit. So it should be a good fight, this, I think, to complete the podium. There's a good few people in there within a relatively small amount of track.
4 seconds covering 3rd position all the way down to 8th, because Brenner and Cardalus are still fighting 0.3 of a second between them. Brenner is up ahead of Cardalus for the moment, at least half a second back from Zacconi. 3 riders still more or less in a group together. Zacconi, though, I thought he was going to go with Marcon when he passed Tulovic, but he hasn't really. Still 1.5 seconds back from Lukas Tulovic, so has never made the impression on this race and hasn't really made an impression on this lap so far either, as we see Edgar Pons 8 seconds clear of Jesko Rafin, and Rafin is actually losing ground now to Tommaso Marcon, so we might have a bit of a grandstand finish in our final 5 laps here.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Marcon that last time around quite significantly faster than Eki, and Tulovic was the guy in that kind of gaggle of riders who was, you know, second fastest, so it should be an interesting finish. But like you say, Raffin actually isn't that far ahead of those guys, so it could be pretty interesting. But the Swiss rider obviously is an absolute veteran of management and race pace, so we'll have to see how that pans out for him.
Raffin, our championship leader, is the rider in focus for the moment, looking isolated in second position and set to claim yet another podium place, but the fight is going off behind him. Marcon still ahead of Eki, Tulovic in fifth position, Zacconi dropping back, and I think that's probably race run in terms of that fight. We've got 3 riders in contention for P3. Zacconi dropping back has just got to try and defend that place. Brenner's now broken clear of Cardalus as we pick up Marcon after his move on Dimas Eki, looking good for a podium position here. This would be an excellent result, his first podium of the campaign.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, pretty spectacular through there for the speed-up rider. But I think I think now these 3 guys are going to be who's fighting over the podium. Like you say, Brenner just able to make that gap now back to Cardalus. Obviously, that's been a race-long fight, and he's pretty much comparably behind Zacconi. The gaps are pretty much the same there. So now it'll be interesting to see what he can do, because obviously fighting it out, you're going to lose some serious ground. So they've been scrapping for quite a while now. Now if they can get their heads down, they might have a bit more pace to really tag on to Zacconi.
Eki more or less matching Marcon's pace, but not really gaining on him for the moment at least. And so, as you say, it could well be a question of Tulovic and whether he can hold on in the latter stage of this race. With less than 4 laps to go, I think we can safely say that we know our top 2, barring any dramas or curse of commentator in the latter stage of this race. Now that I've said it, the top 2 positions look settled, but it's much closer from 3rd position down.
Yeah, definitely. I like to think maybe if you call out the commentator's curse, if we do that ourselves, maybe we take it away and sort of dampen the effect.
I've never been one for superstition anyway.
Me neither, but sometimes, you know, I do wonder, because there are some things. I guess it's the Bader-Meinhof thing, isn't it, where you've seen something once and then it gets repeated and then you suddenly start noticing it everywhere, but it's just because you've had your attention called to it that once. There we saw a little bit of a moment for Marcon. Some pretty cowboy style coming out of there on the green stuff as well. I have to be careful of that. We've seen a couple of guys penalised for track limits today, but I think that's obviously just one of those mistakes. Run a bit wide, that's not a problem. It's when you start taking advantage of it and sort of making the track essentially wider to gain an advantage that race direction come down on you.
Pons, Raffin, comfortable 1st and 2nd. We're going to have the same top 2 as we've had in the last 2 races, and indeed in the same order. So we're seeing a familiar trend compared to Aragon, and we see them making their way through. It's Pons from Raffin. Marcon in 3rd position.
I like the way you say them, but Pons in incredible clear air there. You really do get a sense when you see him on screen and you see those longer shots, completely alone, absolute domination, really, really incredible performance from the Spaniard. But he really will be ruining at this stage in the season that first round in Portugal, because it's seriously dented his chances at taking another title.
Brenner has well and truly escaped away from Cardalus now. I did say that he was starting to break. Well, that battle itself is pretty much over. Brenner, though, is still tagged onto the back of Zacconi for 6th and 7th places, so that's where our next potential overtake could happen. Eki, though, still not too far behind Marcon. You can see that big group there. They're encountering lap traffic as well. Some of the stock riders towards the back of the field being lapped, so that gives an extra bit of incentive in the last couple of laps and an extra opportunity if someone catches a lap runner at the wrong moment, an extra opportunity for the rider chasing at very least to potentially gain a position.
Yeah, definitely. Traffic always adds a little bit of extra spice, sometimes in a good way if you're trying to close someone down, and sometimes in a terrible way if you're really in your rhythm. But yeah, blue flags there obviously warning those slower guys to just move out the way because the lead train is coming through. But yeah, it's doesn't look like it's going to play too much into this battle here. It's more, you know, just to make them aware that those guys are coming, and I'm sure the majority of them will see that well in time.
Over 9 seconds the gap now between Pons and Jesko Raffin, who sits in 2nd position. And Raffin, in turn, has just managed that gap of a couple of seconds to whoever has been in 3rd position. Tulovic early on, then Eki, now Tommaso Marcon. And Marcon a 2nd clear of Eki, so that one looks like it's settling down as well. The real fight is between Zacconi and Brenner in 6th position, because there's now less than a 1/10 of a second between them as they fight it out, as I said, over P6.
Yeah, really, really close there. And those guys, Marcon, Eki, Tulovic, all comparable pace last time around, but the gaps are a little bit bigger now, sort of around a second between each bike, which is fairly sizable if you're trying to make an overtake. So yeah, I think it looks like, barring any drama, Marcon looks like he might have that third place in that first podium, like you said, but Zacconi, Brenner could be some last corner fireworks.
Brenner faster than anyone other than Pons on his previous lap number 15, as they come through to complete lap 16 and start our last lap. Edgar Pons well clear, and this is almost going to be a demonstration lap from him. Over 10 seconds the gap up front.
I always used to say this when Chaz Davis used to pull away at the front of the field quite often in Superbike. It's like, he just loves that track day feeling. And this is definitely what Pons has today. He must just feel like he's just having a lovely sunny Sunday ride on his bike at the beautiful Jerez circuit. And, you know, incredible performance, and it'll be an incredible win. 10 seconds now, over 10 seconds that gap. Really, really dominant.
And still within a second of his fastest lap of the race, so it's not really like he's dropped it off massively. He's just carried on, eating out 0.6 of a second a lap over Raffin. His advantage over the Swiss rider was more dramatic early on, but he has settled it somewhat, and well, he can afford to ease off a little bit now as the gap dips below the 10-second marker. Once again, there's not really too much to try and chase in the latter stage of this race for Edgar Pons. I think we've got fastest lap of the race sewn up. I think we've got 25 points sewn up as well. It'll be a hat-trick of victories for Edgar Pons, our race leader. Jesko Raffin in second, still third with Marcon, over a second up on Eki. Likewise a second between Eki and Tulovic, who had that skirmish earlier on in the race. Zacconi and Brenner, absolutely nothing between them now. And Brenner, who is just a couple of tenths of a second behind, had set a new personal best second sector to really claw onto the tail of Zacconi, and I wonder whether he'll get an opportunity in the latter stages to come through. But it's a one-wheeled celebration for a third consecutive race win for Edgar Pons. Great stuff from him, start to finish, pole to flag, as we see Tommaso Marcon eventually claiming his first podium position of the season. Dimasecki coming over the line in fourth. Lucas Tulovic gets fifth, and Zacconi does hold on ahead of Marcel Brenner in the latter stages, but by less than 0.3 of a second. And Xavier Cardelus, who was part of that group fighting from third position down to eighth, he will come over the line in the end, 20 seconds back from our race winner. Edgar Pons making it look straightforward there from start to finish. He was on his own, and we saw him working his way through, counting the laps down almost at one stage it looked for Edgar Pons, and 3 victories in succession, 5 podium finishes in 6 races. Pons is the man with the momentum at the moment, but he's only making up 5 points at a time on Jesko Raffin. As we see our stock winner, class winner David Sanchez, who finished in 11th position in the scratch race, first in class, and 30 seconds clear actually of his nearest rival in class, so pretty comfortable and pretty impressive for him to have beaten a couple of the Moto2 regulars who finished outside of the top 10 as well. So Sanchez best of the rest really in 11th position, but involved in a good fight there further back in the field as well. See Jesko Raffin on his lap of honour, means he hasn't been off the podium all season, still with, as he leaves Jerez, of course, just a single race in the Moto2 European Championship, and it will be Tommaso Marcon who will be absolutely delighted with his result here today. I'm sure that Pons will be pleased with his race victory that moves him into second in the overall standings, that eats up 5 points of the championship lead, but that championship lead between those two stood at 52 points coming into this race, so the fact that it's now 47 leaves Raffin in a much better position for the 3 final races than it does Pons. He could even afford a retirement and still be comfortably in front. If he can carry on banking second positions, he'll have the championship sewn up before heading to Valencia for the final rounds. Edgar Pons, though, it is, who is the man of the moment and has the opportunity to celebrate here, having led from start to finish. Certainly proved himself the man with the pace over the last 3 races. And what could have been, but for that double retirement or double non-score in Estoril. Still hopes of claiming this crown in the last stages of the season, but with every race that Raffin comes over the line on the podium, he makes it just that little bit more difficult for his rivals. And I think we can safely say that we're down to 2 contenders for the title now, after a dramatic weekend for Hector Garzo, who was cost his pole position by a penalty and then ended up getting caught up in the pack as he made his way round through the opening sequence of turns. Tommaso Marcon with third position will bank the 16 championship points and actually now move above Hector Garzo in the series standings overall. Garzo has certainly been one of the men with the pace, and I would expect to see him back on the podium before the season is out. And Garzo is still very much a contender for third position in the World Championship, but probably not now for the title itself, which, as I say, I would suggest is down to a one-on-one fight now between Rafin and Pons in the remaining 3 races, 2 in Albacete, of course, and then 1 in the season decider in Valencia. But this Moto2 European Championship could well be settled by then. Rafin trying to settle it down with a 4th consecutive runner-up position. So Moto2 European Championship, our race winner is Edgar Pons.
So Edgar, another incredible victory here. Now it's 3 in a row for you. What can you tell us after that race? Absolute domination.
Yeah, it was a really good race, no? We knew that in the practices we have a little bit more of rhythm. So our main objective was to make a good start, pass the first lap first, and push as much as I can, no? And then I just was controlling the board, I was pushing, and it was nice. No, at the end we had a lot of sliding in the rear. Maybe I pushed too hard in the beginning, but I was able to make a big gap, so I was able to manage the distance, and I'm really happy. No, as you said, 3 in a row. I told you in Aragon we had a really good setting, and here we came and we also had a good setting, so I felt really good with the bike. So I want to thank the team and all the people who are behind myself.
Y ahora también en castellano, porfa.
Sí, ha sido un fin de semana muy bueno. Sabíamos que en los entrenos teníamos un poquito más de ritmo que los demás, así que mi objetivo en la carrera era intentar salir primero. Si no era posible, pues la primera vuelta adelantar al piloto que tenía delante y desde ahí tirar, ¿no? He conseguido salir primero, que eso me lo ha puesto un poco más fácil. Y nada, he tirado fuerte, sabía que tenía buen ritmo, estaba empujando cada vuelta. Y bueno, al final los neumáticos se han gastado un poquito, era un poquito difícil de controlar la derrapada entrando, y en las curvas rápidas saliendo también la perdíamos mucho. Pero bueno, he conseguido mantener una buena distancia con el segundo, y así que ha sido fácil controlarlo. Así que muy contento, ¿no? Dar las gracias al equipo. En Aragón ya hicimos una muy buena carrera y este fin de semana yo creo que ha sido aún mejor, así que muchas gracias al equipo y toda la gente que está detrás mío.
Impressive ride from Edgar Pons, and we're going to see it again. Start to finish, he did say that the plan, knowing he had the pace advantage, was to try and hit the front and break away, and if he couldn't, to pass quickly and break away. Well, he didn't even need to make the passing manoeuvre. Start to finish win for Edgar Pons. official results then of that one, and it's Edgar Pons who takes the 25 championship points. A lesser margin in the end, but it was 10 seconds before he started to back it off on the final laps. Excellent race from Tommaso Marcon, who provided most of the entertainment there. Initially in his fight with Alessandro Zacconi, then breaking clear and making a couple of passing manoeuvres to pass Dima Secchi and Lukas Tulovic and claim a podium position. So an excellent ride there from Marcon, who is the top Italian in the championship standings. And he, as I said previously, makes up ground in the series overall with his excellent effort there. A few retirements, most notably, of course, problems for Hector Garzo in the early stages of the race. And that really has dented his championship challenge for 2018. But things settling down, certainly in the top two positions between Ruffin and Pons. And 5 points gained, 15 points gained over the last 3 races by Edgar Pons. Still a lot of work to do in this 2018 season. Jesko Ruffin leads it on 171, but our race winner, who will shortly hear the Spanish national anthem, sits on 124 points. So the gap is brought down, but only to 47 points, and with only 3 races to go, Ruffin moves ever closer to this Moto2 European Championship. Amazing, really, to hear from Pons that he could feel the tyres going off in the latter stages, and he's talking about whether he pushed too hard in the early stages of the race. To all intents and purposes, to us, it just looked like it was far too easy for Edgar Pons to take that race victory. We see the trophies awarded then. Our 3rd position finisher, Tommaso Marcon, 16 points banked, his first podium of the season. Moves above Hector Garzo in the championship standings and up into 4th place. And of course, Augusto Fernandez still sits 3rd, just from the points he recorded early in the campaign with 5 consecutive podium finishes. But he will gradually drop back as his rivals around him continue to pick up points, and he's moved on from the championship. You can effectively count him out, and I don't think he'll feature on this European Championship podium. Celebration then for Edgar Pons, who takes his 3rd consecutive victory. And what might have been but for that double non-score at the opening round in Estoril, as he hears the Spanish national anthem for the 3rd time in succession. Our race winner here in Jerez, just a single race in the Moto2 European Championship this weekend, so the pressure was certainly on, but Edgar Pons didn't disappoint.
Fuerte el aplauso para el ganador.
Our podium trio then, flanked by our Superstock race winner, top performer here in Jerez in that class. But it's the 25 championship points in the Moto2 European Championship that go the way of Edgar Pons. And now it's time to spray. Pons has got the momentum with him, but can he force Jesko Ruffin into an error in the latter stages of the season? It looks to me as though the Swiss rider is cruising towards this title, even with another 2nd place finish. We'll take a look at the championship standings then. It's Jesko Ruffin who leads the way on that 171-point marker, still protecting the vast majority of his lead, even losing 5 points here today. Edgar Pons, 2nd position, 47 points back. Fernandez there, he's a bit of a red herring, as I said, as long as the riders behind him, Marcon, Garzo, Eki, who will have an opportunity to move above him. On paper, they should be fighting it out for 3rd position. Just 7 points cover those 3, and just 10 points cover Marcon all the way down to Tulovic. So plenty of battling still to go in that fight. We see the point standings further down the order. Ivo Lopez, of course, 35 points just scored from the weekend in Estoril. And that was a memorable performance, but as a wildcard rider effectively. As we see the remainder of the field and their point scoring from 2018. But the focus very much on the lead group, because we have settled it down now to pretty much a two-rider fight. 75 points up for grabs in the remaining 3 rounds. 77 points for the rider who sits in 3rd position. So it's between Rafin and Edgar Pons now for the title in this FIM CEV Repsol Moto2 European Championship. Well, that one's certainly a steadier race in Moto2 compared to the absolute chaos of group fighting in the European Talent Cup and the Moto3 Junior World Championship. We've reached the end of our opening round of races here in Jerez, but there is still more great action to come. We return to the track with the Moto3 Junior World Championship next up, with the final race of the day in the European Talent Cup. Stand by for more great action from the south of Spain. Third race of the day completed then here in Jerez, and still 2 to come. We'll return to the track for Moto3 and then indeed for the European Talent Cup. Now we build up to the action in the Moto2 European Championship, the 4th race of the day here in Jerez.